This episode is brought to you by iZotope. Our friends over at iZotope create the most thoughtfully and intuitively designed software for audio repair, mixing, and mastering. I use their tools every day for the podcast, and I love it. And I think you will too. Go over to iZotope.com and check it out. That's iZotope.com. iZotope. Use the code FRET10 at checkout for a 10% discount. That's all caps, F-R-E-T, and the number 10.
Allow me to live and breathe like a man.
You've heard his words on classic albums like Pacific Ocean Blue and Friends. His 1969 collaboration with Brian Wilson, A World of Peace Must Come, gained almost legendary status as one of pop's most storied lost albums before being resurrected to great acclaim by Light in the Attic in 2008. Now you're cordially invited to take a trip into the mind of poet and songwriter Stephen J. Kalinich. Heyday Again Records presents I Love My Life, a postcard from one of the last standing poets of peace and excitation. Order your copy today. I Love My Life by Stephen J. Kalinich and Friends. You'll see why heavy hitters like Brian Wilson, Dennis Wilson, Paul McCartney, Steve Cropper, P.F. Sloan, and Diana Ross have all worked with him. I Love My Life by Stephen J. Kalinich. Order today at realgonemusic.com. Again, that's realgonemusic.com. The second single from Future Prophet Records is here. Birthday Girl presents Never the Sound, available right now on Future Prophet Records. That's Future, Prophet, records.com. Order now.
It's so amazing that it can get you to cry, and you go, why am I crying? Why am I feeling like this? And I thought, well, maybe it's because I was raising my kids at the time, but no, it goes deeper than that. I think that Brian, the way that he can write, and this is why his fans love him so much, too, he's got a purity of heart that very few people have got. He went through a lot of stuff with his father and growing up, and he went through all that stuff in the 70s with he did use drugs, but I don't think he did as much drugs, as other people. He lived through it just fine, but he went through the Landy thing, he went through a lot of stuff, and yet he's not bitter.
Right.
I think for some reason the music made him change his mind so much that he could grow from his music and heal.
Welcome to another episode of Discograffiti's wildly in-depth Beach Boys series and Your Dreams Come True, where Brian Wilson freaks like you and me get our chance to delve deep into the barely believable history and prodigious discography of my favorite band of all time, and also coincidentally the best, along with a slew of over 50 top-shelf guests ranging from musicians inspired by their work, family members, documentary directors, songwriting collaborators, Beach Boys authors, producers, touring band members, and for good measure, some of the Beach Boys themselves. I'm your host, Dave Gebrow, and special thanks goes out to co-producers Chuck Granata, Dennis Dykin, and Mark Freed, without whom this series would not have happened. And in this episode, we'll be turning our spray cans on the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds. In this episode, we feature the next entry in the Chuck Granata Pet Sounds interview series. It's part 3, the final part of Chuck's chat with his close friend, legendary bassist Carol Kaye. This time around, they're joined by Chuck's bassist buddy, Ammo. Here's just a few of the many things that Carol discusses with Discograffiti in part 3 of this podcast. What Murray Wilson was like at that time, the love that Chuck Britz had for Brian Wilson, especially during his dark time in the 1970s, Carol's views on Paul McCartney's bass playing, her nightmare story of working with producer Joe Thomas, and Carol's absolutely brilliant way of explaining why Brian Wilson's music connected with people in such a big way. For over 4 years now, Discograffiti's Friday episodes have been completely free, and it's been my pleasure. But for a variety of reasons, Discograffiti's now moved to the subscription-based Patreon as our primary platform. Moving forward, our public stream will feature a teaser of the Friday episode and a Tuesday teaser of the bonus episode, and that's all. But here's the good news. Only $5 a month will get you the weekly Friday podcast to which you become accustomed. That's it. It's a no-brainer at just $1 an episode. And just that little bit will be what's required to help the show survive. To sweeten the pot, you'll also get regular installments of the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound podcast. That's Rudy Fishman's podcast within a podcast featuring our Patreon members as guests. You'll also get access to over 100 back episodes of that show. The $10 Lieutenant tier gets you all that, plus access to half of the Patreon archive. That's hundreds of additional episodes, plus copies of my personal show notes, which include invaluable research, star ratings, and reviews. But the $20 major tier is the place to be, unless you can support the show on even higher tiers, which, if you can afford it, offers substantial perks, including advertising on the show and selecting the guests and artists I cover. With the major tier and above, you get it all. The Monday bonus episodes, aka the best stuff, the Friday show, the Soldiers of Sound podcast, plus access to the entire archive. That's many hundreds of Patreon episodes, an absolutely endless barrage of music entertainment, including 50 episodes of The Private Press with Paul Major, Rock Cousteau, Queasy Listening, and so much more. This tier will also be the only way to access the entire upcoming Spirit series, the entire Love series, the entire Lenny Waronker series, and the entire Jefferson Airplane series. Frankly, it'll keep you busy for the rest of your life. So support the podcast that's been supporting you for years. Discograffiti's calling, and it needs you, so don't risk feeling guilty by not giving. But enough of me yapping. Go on, subscribe now. Visit patreon.com/discograffiti and find the tier that's right for you. And away we go then!
I have to preface this with about World War II, because World War II, you didn't talk. You didn't talk about war. You didn't talk. Well, you were restricted. Loose lips sink ships. See, so nobody talked about World War II. You knew the guys were going to go out and die, you know. But people, instead of talking, they went to dance to music. They went to listen to music, and music became the way that you express yourself and the way that you feel those deep feelings. And I think that in jazz in the 50s, that same thing happened. They came to listen to the music, made them heal, made them feel good. You know, you listen with your ears, and that's why we'd just sit up on stage. We wouldn't move a muscle, didn't crack a smile or anything. There was no stage presence. You know, what was important was the music, and you didn't read music. You did it all by ear. And I think coming in the 60s, that was still happening in the 60s, and especially with Brian. And I think he adopted that way, and being around the jazz players, especially with him, made him feel comfortable. And hearing us jam and stuff like that, we used music for our feeling, and Brian is a terrific example of that. Here's a kid that went through a lot of stuff as a kid and growing up, and he was able to convey that in his music and reach other young men. Now, you're talking about rock and roll. I mean, they're dancing the twist and all that kind of stuff, but I'm talking about inner feelings, because along came the assassinations, Kennedy and all that. And on top of this, and changes, huge changes in the 60s. My God, the wars, and then the marches. And on top of that, you had the TV going on in the 50s, The Perfect American Life. You know, Ozzie and Harriet Nelson, and The Way It's Supposed to Be, and all that kind of stuff. And this is the way that everybody grew up. They didn't get the love from their parents like the parents are given today to their kids, but they got the idea from TV. And I think that Brian is saying something else in the music. He's recognizing feelings, because you can't live your life according to your TV set and all this kind of stuff, and yet that's what was happening. You know, we were living the good life. You know, you had the man that worked and the woman that did this, and they had their roles cut out for them, you know, but along comes these kids with all these feelings that wait a minute, my parents won a war, and I can't even get a good grade at school and stuff like that. You know, there's a competition between the generations, you know. And I think the feelings that, this is just my feeling, looking back at all this, because I grew up during World War II. I know the fear, and the fear that was not spoken about. Guys went over there, and it was just as bad as Vietnam, from what I heard, later on. They did not talk about it, at all, about World War II. They came back to raise their kids, and I think the kids not being talked to, knowing that something was up, they found something in Brian's music that could explain a lot of the things that they were feeling.
Right.
That's so well put.
There was a major connection.
There was a major connection there, yeah, because Brian was feeling the same way, and he was helping to heal, and he was writing the feelings down in the music that they felt, and I think it's that thing that grabs, especially young men, because the women's lib was coming on then, and, just a whole bunch of things, too.
I think it's amazing.
Yeah, that's why he's amazing. That's why this whole thing about his public and his fans, it's amazing to me too, but I see why, because he was able to nail that in the music, and he nailed the feelings, and so they're saying, oh, you understand me. They found somebody, not their parents, but somebody named Brian Wilson that understood their feelings and could put it in the music, see?
Right.
So how do you feel having been such a big part of that?
Oh, my God. I mean, the older I get, the more humble I get about it. It's like, whoa, because I understand more about it now, too, than I did at the time. We all played, but we all were expressing our feelings, too. I mean, it was really something to be a part of that. And I'm glad for Brian that he's finally getting the recognition that he deserves, because he did write that music. And I'm just thrilled to death, because when I first heard about his problems, I was crippled up with arthritis, and I had TMJ so bad. I had bad surgery that made it even worse, and I was just trying to live myself because I was going through a lot of pain and a lot of seizures and stuff like that. So I'm hearing some stuff, and I tried writing him a few times, never got an answer back, and then I heard about Landy, and then when I finally saw him on TV, because Hal Blaine and others said, give up on Brian, he's as good as gone, and da-da-da. And I thought, no, wait a minute, something funny is going on here. And then when I saw him act really pissed off on the TV cameras about Mike Love,
right,
there's nothing wrong with Brian. Something's just not right in his life. I mean, he's going through some hard times or something.
Right.
And then it was shortly after that I moved back to California, and I eventually connected with him, and he said, Carol, you know how hard it's been for me the last 20 years? I said, what the hell with that, Brian? I mean, you have friends around you and a great wife and good people and your fans and all this stuff, so he knew he'd been through some hard times, but he wasn't bitter about it. He just couldn't believe it,
Right. He's been through some tough times, but it sounds like he's ready to move on.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that he had a different life than most of us, because he was a big hit when he was a young guy, and he got used to the money and being in the studio and stuff like that. And so he's different than most of us, and I'm sure that he probably still has to take that medication because of Landy. Landy gave him a lot of really bad medication, from what I understand. From what I heard, they kept him drugged and just alive enough to sign papers.
Right.
Yeah,
that's criminal. That's why so many people are sticking up for Brian. It's just that he's been through so much and he survived.
All right, that about does it. To hear the full episode, just visit patreon.com/discograffiti and either subscribe as a private or higher, or just purchase it as a one-off. If you are a fan of the show, please do one of those two to help ensure Discograffiti's continued existence. Stay tuned, because next week brings upon us the very first episode of an incredible new series about spirit, featuring band biographer Ryan Gabrinetti. This one's a wild ride, and I am unbelievably psyched to kick it off. Episode 1 explains how such a disparate gang of psychedelic bandits came together in the first place, and delves headfirst into one of the greatest debut albums of all time. Okay, here's the week up ahead. This Sunday, our weekly show within a show, the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound podcast, drops for our Patreon's private tier. These are real people with talent and a burning fire deep inside, just like you and I. Then come Tuesday, the major tier gets a very special treat. Tuesday's bonus episode is Spirit Part 2, wherein the band release albums 2 and 3. That's The Family That Plays Together and Clear, not to mention the soundtrack for the 1968 film Model Shop. There'll be a very short sneak peek running publicly for free on Tuesday morning, but the entirety of the show will only be accessible on the major tier of our Patreon. A heartfelt Discograffiti thanks goes out to my beautiful wife and son, Jen and Mason, Carol Kaye, Chuck Granata, Ammo, Rudy Fishman, Becky Boyd, my mom, my dad, my incredibly loyal fans, and especially the entire Patreon community, the Soldiers of Sound. I love every last one of you, and this show would not exist without you, my friends. Speaking of friends, it's high time for some new ones. They're in our Facebook group, Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound. That's the best way to find out what's coming up on the show, but there's a hell of a lot more. You get recaps of the day in music history, the ability to pitch questions to guests, polls that put you in the driver's seat on guest and band decisions, and access to a thriving creative hub if you're looking for a collaborator. So make sure you don't miss out. You can find the link to the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound Facebook page right there in the show notes. And if you don't mess with the Zuck, no sweat. Just email me at info@discograffiti.com and I'll keep you in the loop. So now that it's done and you want more, another way to dive even deeper into the classic rock and roll from the 1960s is to go to the Beach Boys Season 1, Catch a Wave, 1961 to 1964, from episode 189 on, the Righteous Brothers Bill Medley interview, that's 181 and 182, my interview with the Free Design, that's 160 to 162, my epic interview with the Mamas and Papas Michelle Phillips, that's 141 to 159, Blood, Sweat, and Tears, that's 137, my 12-hour interview with Terry Kirkman and Jules Alexander from the Association, that's 109 to 113, Vashti Bunyan reading her entire output, that's 103 to 104. Sergio Diaz from Os Mutantes, that's 86 and 87. Bert Summer, that's 83 and 84. Sweetwater is episode 79. A tribute to David Crosby, 77 and 78. Andrew Tuttle rates the Monks, 74. Jim Florentine on Black Sabbath is 64 to 68. Lou Barlow on the Zombies is 59 and 60. Marvin Gaye biographer David Ritz rates Marvin Gaye, that's 45 to 47. Blind Faith is 43. Anthony Fantano rates the Velvet Underground is 32 and 33. Bob Forrest rates the band is 25 and 27. Monkees manager Andrew Sandoval rates the Monkees, that's 22 and 23. Don Randy rates David Axelrod as 17. Badfinger is 16. The Bee Gees is 10 and 11. Sly and the Family Stone is 5, 6, and 7. And Pink Floyd is 1 and 2. And of course, be sure to mark your calendars, because next Friday, January 9th, we're coming at you with part 1 of our brand new Spirit Deep Dive. Trust me, you're not going to want to miss it. And so, from now till then, don't let our youth go to waste, lads and ladies. It's Discograffiti!